On today's video we have the first FO of the channel, which I'm really excited to share with you. I've also knitted the whole hood on my Traveler hoodie. I've made some really good progress on the body of my Belle and Sebastian pullover. We have a new cast on, and I even knitted a few squares on my switch up blanket. Hi and welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Luisa, but everyone calls me Lu, and this is a podcast where I talk about everything when it comes to my knitting journey. So I always forget to say this, but everything I talk about during these videos is always a link down below in the video description. So the link to my Ravelry page in case you want to check my notes on any projects that I've talked about, that I'm working on, or that I have worked on. So the gauge, the needles, any modifications I made is always down below. You can always have that information, and also the links to the patterns that I'm always talking about. Now let's go to today's video. I'm not wearing any hand knits today actually because it's a little bit hot outside, and I think I'm going to wear my finished FO for the remaining of the video, so it was just going to be too much. Now let's talk about the first finished object of the channel, which is the Thru Lines shawl. This is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. It is knit from tip to tip with a triangular shape. It features some I-cord and mosaic stitch and mosaic color work. I've knitted mine with a 4mm needles, and the yarn I used is BC Yarn Bio Shetland in the colorways 1, which is the beige, 45, the gray black yarn, the charcoal gray, and 53, which is this beautiful rust color. These are just my leftovers that I've kicked them up to make them look nice. Now, when I last talked about this project, I was about here, I think, with the decreases. So I've knitted 15 pattern repeats since the last video and finished, blocked everything. I've even worn it one time. I was going out, it was cold actually. It was pretty cold. I think it was 5 or 6 degrees outside, so I got the chance to wear it. So I was pretty happy with the cold weather for once. So just before I forget, I want to talk about the yarn really quick, because the dark one is, I call this charcoal gray. It's not actually black. It has a little bit of a white hue, a white undertone. I don't know if you can see that. I think you can, but I'm really happy I didn't choose a black yarn, because I have a black sweater that I've knitted a couple of years ago, and that sweater picks up so much lint, it drives me insane. I don't actually wear that a lot because of this. So when I was buying the yarn for this project, my idea was that a charcoal gray or this black with a white undertone, it wasn't going to pick up too much lint, and I think I got it right, at least for now. I've worn it one time, like I said, and nothing bothered me, at least so far, at least during that one time. But I'm pretty happy with this color so far, and now I don't think I will have much of a chance to wear this before next winter, but that is fine. I've got the chance to wear it one time, so at least I can say that it didn't from the blocking mats to my closet. Now let's talk about the blocking, because I blocked it since I finished, and now the curling is gone. It's completely gone, so I'm so relieved to say that the curling is gone, because before I finished it, before I blocked it, it was curling up so much you couldn't even see almost the triangular shape of this shawl. So now the curling is gone. I'm just showing you the wrong side so you can see how now it stays nice and flat, and I am really happy with it. I'm really happy with the shape and also the size. This thing is gigantic. It grew so much with blocking. I wasn't expecting that. So the wingspan of this shawl is almost 3 meters long. It is actually 2 meters and 90 centimeters long. And it has 56 centimeters of center depth, so that's okay. I'm not really bothered by the size of this shawl. It's almost too long, too big. I mean, it is too big, but that's okay. I don't have anything that big to wrap around my neck, so it's nice to have a different option. I don't think I need more than one gigantic shawl, but it's nice to have just one. And I can wrap it 2 times around my neck, which was my initial idea. I can even wrap it 2 times and tie 2 little knots on the front. That's how big this shawl is, but that's fine. Now, when it comes to blocking, I've already said, now it stays nice and flat, so that's perfect. But when it comes to bleeding, the black yarn bled so much. The water was dark gray, almost black. I do the burrito thing 2 times with 2 different towels, and it stained both of my towels, and I wasn't even using white towels. So one of them was light gray and the other was light blue, if I'm not mistaken, and it stained both of my towels. Even after I used 5 color catcher sheets, vinegar, salt and cold water, because I was really worried with color bleeding the black yarn, and I think I was right, because it stained my white yarn. It stained the beige yarn. So if you hold the shawl against the leftover beige yarn, you can see that the shade of this this is against the light, so maybe if I hold it like this it will be better. I don't know if you can see or not on camera, but the shade of the beige yarn changed a little bit with blocking, and I think it was because of the bleeding. I mean, it makes sense. This yarn, the beige yarn, is beige, it's pretty beige, it's not white, it's a light beige. But my shawl now is the beige one. I wouldn't say it's beige anymore. Now I think it's just white. I mean, it's fine. I still have a pretty good contrast with the other 2 colors, so I'm fine with it. I'm not bothered by it. I don't think I would be able to tell it changed if I didn't hold my leftover against the fabric, my shawl, but it did. The fact of the matter is it did, but it is fine. It is still 100% wearable. Like I said, I wouldn't be able to tell it is stained if I didn't have any leftovers, so that is fine. But this shawl grew so much with blocking. I think I already said that, but the sample, the pattern calls for 2 meters and 64 centimeters or something like that of wingspan for the shawl, and my finished object is 30 centimeters longer than that. So that's why I have such a huge shawl. I used all my blocking mats when I was blocking this, when I laid it flat to dry, but that is fine. It was just a little bit funny to see all the floors filled with blocking mats, but it worked. And the fabric also softened up with blocking quite a lot. I don't have a sensitive skin, so take that into consideration when I say this. But I think this yarn is pretty soft. I mean, in my opinion, when I hold it against my skin, against my neck, I don't get any itch or anything. Like I said, I've worn it 1 time and it was pretty nice to wear. And since this is a finished object, I think it's nice to talk about the amount of yarn I used compared to what the pattern calls for, and also the cost for my project. So last episode I was talking about how I felt like I was using less yarn than what a pattern calls for. And I don't know where I got that from, because I've used more yarn than the pattern suggested. I mean, now that I think about it, I think I know I was only looking at the number of skeins I had still left untouched at the time. I wasn't thinking about the weight of each skein, so I would say that's a problem. So now let's talk about the real amount of yarn I've used for each of the 3 colorways. So this is just my leftovers, so I've weighed them so I can say with certainty that I've used more yarn than what a pattern calls for, but that makes sense because my final piece is bigger. So yeah, like I was saying, the white yarn, the beige one, I've used 61 grams, the pattern calls for 50, the black one color 45. I've used 170 grams. The pattern calls for 150, and the rust dark orangey one is the only one I've used less than what the pattern calls for. So the pattern suggests 39 grams. I've used 29, but the pattern also calls for a sport weight for this third color, and I've used a fingering weight, the same yarn as I used for the other two colors. So I think that makes sense to use less fingering weight yarn than sport weight. Now, when it comes to cost, I'm just talking about the cost for this project. I'm not talking about the cost for my leftovers, because this yarn will go towards another project, so the cost will go to the other project. The yarn only cost me 32 euros and 72 cents. The pattern I paid 9 euros and 24 cents. So in total, this pattern cost me 41 cents. 41 euros. I mean, that would be nice to cost 41 cents. But this pattern cost me 41 euros and 96 cents, which is fine. It's not the cheapest project, but it is fine, especially if you consider this is a black shawl. I mean, it's mainly black, so I think I will be able to wear this a lot during the winter. It is a really long shawl and I really like it. So I'm fine with the cost for this piece. And yeah, that is my shawl. That is the first finished FO of the channel, so I'm really excited about that. I think I will just wear this during the rest of the video, like I said. And now let's talk about the first WIP of today's episode, which is my Belle and Sebastian pullover. This is a pattern by Nordlund. It is knitted top down with drop shoulders. I'm knitting mine with satin sleeves, but the pattern calls for drop shoulder construction, and it features cable and moss stitch going down the side of the body and sleeves. I am knitting size 3, which is supposed to give me 15 centimeters of positive ease, and I'm using a 5.5mm needles for this project, and the yarn I'm using is Cardigan in the colorway 106 Oat Grey, which is this lovely light gray shade over here. So I forgot to share that last episode, but I'm actually making 2 modifications to the body of this project, of this sweater. So I have extra stitches on the underarm. When I joined in the round, I cast on a few more stitches than what the pattern calls for. So I have 5 stitches on the underarm on each side of the body, and I've also twisted a few stitches just to tighten them up a little bit because I felt like they were too loose. So there's this column of a twisted knit stitch going down both sides of the body. And on each side of this twisted knit stitch is a purl stitch. And I felt like the 2 purl stitches on each side, 1 stitch on each side, purl stitch, were just a little bit too loose. So I decided to twist those as well, just to get the little extra amount of yarn out of the way and make for a tighter, neater purl stitch. And I'm really glad that I went for this little modification. Now, if you wanna see how I approached the whole satin sleeve modification situation, just check out my last podcast episode. It is linked down below. I shared all my stitch counts, the increases I made, how many centimeters I've worked on the yoke before I started with the increases to join the round, everything. Now let's talk about my progress since the last episode. So this purple marker here is where I was last episode, and since then I've made a really good progress on the body, and I've even knitted the whole collar, the whole folded collar. But before that, let's talk about the body, because this is where I was last episode, and this is just a marker so I can track how many centimeters I still have to knit on the body before I start the ribbing. And if I was worried with running out of yarn before, now I'm almost certain that I am playing yarn chicken, because this is where, right around here, is where I was supposed to start the ribbing. The pattern calls for 20 centimeters of body here before you start knitting the ribbing, and I've knitted 20 centimeters, and when I tried this on, it didn't even hit my belly button. It was that short, and I'm not a tall person, I'm 5'6". So I don't know, is this a cropped sweater? by looking at the pattern photos, I didn't see as a crop sweater. I mean, I don't know, but it doesn't look like it's a crop sweater. The pattern doesn't say anything about it being cropped, so I don't know. But that's what we are going with. So I'm just knitting away on the body until I have the length I think it's reasonable before I start working on the ribbing. So with Sari Nordlund patterns not always being very accurate when it comes to the yarn amount the pattern calls for, and lengthening the body, yeah, now I really think that I'm playing yarn chicken, because I've just finished my bow here, so I don't have any bows attached to the project. But if you look at my yarn wall here, I mean, you can't really see, but I just have 4 more bows of the Woolia, the Cardigan Woolia, and I still have to work, I still have to knit 6 centimeters of the cables of the pattern, plus 5 centimeters of ribbing, and the 2 sleeves, and each bow is only 133 meters. So yeah, I don't think I have enough yarn. I really don't. I hope I get lucky and I have enough yarn to finish this project, but I really don't think I will. But that's fine, I just have to buy 1 or 2 extra bows. I don't like doing that, but I would rather buy more yarn and have a finished object that I'm happy with than spend all that money and time and energy to end up with a sweater that I won't wear because it's too short. So yeah, there's nothing I can do about it, so we'll just see and I will report back on the amount of yarn I have or even the amount of yarn I had to buy to finish the project. Now let's go to the color, because I've made also a few modifications to the pattern, to the color instructions. This is not a norm. I don't usually make, it's not that I don't usually make, sometimes I make a lot of modifications to a pattern and sometimes I don't change anything. I don't know what's with that, but that's fine. So let's talk about the color. I felt like the color opening was just a little bit tighter than what I usually like my colors to fit. So I've decided to add 6 extra stitches when I picked up the stitches to knit the color. I've used a, I don't know, now that I think about it, I don't know if I used a 5mm needle for the color or a 4.5, but you can check my Ravelry page and I'm sure the right information is over there, the correct information. But I've picked up 6 extra stitches to knit the color, and I've knitted, I think the pattern calls for 10 centimeters of ribbing, and I've only knitted 8 or 9 centimeters just to get a slightly more open neck here, neck opening, because like I said, I was worried it was going to be too tight of a fit. And I always like to bind off my stitches and fold the color over at the same time, just one step to do both things. So in order to avoid a tight collar, when I bind off my stitches, I do 3 little steps when I bind off and fold my collars at the same time. Step 1, I change to my body needles. I change from my collar needles, which is usually 1 or 2 sizes smaller than my body needles, to get just a little bit of a looser bind off edge. So that's step 1. Step 2, sometimes when I pick up my stitches to knit the collar, this pickup line, the stitches I always end up a little bit loose. I mean, not always, but 90% of the time. I don't know if this happens with everybody or not, but it almost always happens with me. So if you know anything actually to prevent that from happening, please share that with me, because I always have this problem. So when I fold my collars, in order to remedy that problem, I always pick up a stitch from this pickup line and knit it together, like you knit it together or purl it together, doesn't matter, with the stitches I have on my left hand needle. So I need those two together to fold my color over. And also I use a little bit of extra yarn when I pick up the stitch from my pickup line. And doing so, I can tighten up just a little bit the stitches from the pickup line. So it's like a 2-for-1. I fold my collar when I pick up the stitch from the pickup line, and I also tighten it up just a little bit to make it look neater around here. So I really like doing that. And step 3 of this bind off and fold over process, I always do a yarn over between each stitch that I bind off. So if I have to bind off a purl stitch, I do a yarn over, pick up a stitch from the pickup line, knit it together with my purl stitch on the left hand needle, and pull the 2 stitches on my right hand needle over and off my needles to bind those stitches off. So I bind off 1 stitch and 1 yarn over every time to get a little bit of extra yarn in there, so my stitches don't end up tight. And I will get it off Margot here, so I can really show you what I mean when I say my collar does not end up tight. Alright, so this is what I have, and this is what I mean when I say it is not tight at all. If it goes over my head really easily. The only problem I have with this collar, it has nothing to do with how I approached the bind off and fold over process. It's just I wished this collar was a little bit, the collar opening, the neck opening was a little bit wider, a little bit bigger, but I'm not thinking about it too much, because my hope is when I pick up stitches to knit the sleeves, to knit both sleeves, this the collar will open a little bit, like so. So I will have hopefully the fit that I like for the collar. Alright, now I just said that I change needles when I bind off my folded over collars, and that reminded me of my needles, because for this project I'm using Addi needles, and these are let me just take it off my cable. This is I think it's called Addi Rocket. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's called Addi Rocket or Addi Rockets or something like that. And these needles have a square section with these little indentations here, and these indentations are supposed to massage your hands, your fingers, and make for a better experience while you knit with these needles. And these needles hurt my hand so bad. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or not, but these needles are supposed to massage my hands, and they hurt my hands so bad that I can't work on this project for more than 1 hour at a time or something like that. So I don't know what happens when I use these needles, but these 2 fingers here, and sometimes this little section here of my hands, they hurt so bad that it's terrible. I really like using my Chalgo needles, but I don't have Chalgo needles on a size 5.5. My Chalgo needles only go to a 5mm. So yeah, I really need to invest on a Chalgo 5.5, because I really don't like these needles. If you have anything to share about these needles, if you have any experience with knitting with square needles, please share them with me, because I would really like to like these needles, and I really don't. So yeah, that's my uncalled for review of my Addi needles. Now let's talk about the next project, which is my Traveler hoodie. It's a pattern by Andrea Mowry. It is knitted bottom up with drop shoulders, and you can either knit a hood or a crew neck. I obviously went for the hood, and I am knitting size 3, which is supposed to give me 12 centimeters of positive ease. I am using 4.5mm needles for the body, and the yarn I'm using is Host Yarn Super Soft in the colorway Jasper, held double, and I'm knitting mount from this lovely cone. So last time we talked, I had just finished working on the body and I wanted to do a mid project block before I went ahead and knit the free needle bind off, and so that's what I did. And I also knitted the hood, the entire hood, so I'm really happy about that. Now let's talk about the free needle bind off first. So I'm really glad that I blocked this before, because the yoke actually grew a couple of centimeters, like width-wise. So yeah, this was my first time doing free needle bind off. So I'm really happy with the result, with the finished look of the shoulder seam. The only thing I'm not 100% happy is with the pearl bumps on each side of the shoulder, so the front and back panels. The pearl bumps don't align. So the pearl bumps from the front don't align with the pearl bumps from the back. When you get these little V's or pearl bumps along the shoulder seam, and I'm not unhappy with that, but I wished they would align. I wish this, I don't know, maybe I'm just being picky, I don't know. That's the only thing I would say when it comes to the free needle bind off. The process of doing it is actually pretty easy. Is one of the easiest bind offs I've ever done, if not the easiest. I thought it was like a Italian bind off where you have 3 or 4 steps that you keep on repeating over and over and over again, but it's not. It's basically knit 2 together. So yeah, I'm really happy with the result of the free needle bind off, and the process was also pretty enjoyable. Now, after I finished with the bind off, with the free needle bind off, I went ahead, tried it on. Now I'm really worried that I've maybe got carried away when I knitted the body, and maybe it's just a little bit too long, just a couple of centimeters too long. I don't know, maybe I'll have to go back and do some sweater surgery, maybe not. The jury is still out, we'll see. I won't do anything like that now. I want to have a finished piece, finished sweater, finished hoodie, and wear it a couple of times before I decide on anything when it comes to the length. So for now, this is perfect. It's just maybe a little bit too long, but that's fine. Now let's talk about the hood, because I mean, it's beautiful. So the construction of the hood is like well, you basically get the shape of the hood by doing short rows, by knitting short rows. And one of the things I like about this hood is when you try on this sweater and you, with the finished hood, you just put it over your head and turn on our backs to look at the hood in the mirror. The hood stays like perfectly like it's supposed to. You don't have to rearrange some things or take care of this or that to make it look nicer or fit nicer or anything like that. The hood stays like it's supposed to from the minute you put the sweater on. So I love that. Just like it is here, I think the fit is perfect. I really like the size. When you work on it, when you knit the hood, it looks like it's pretty big. It's a lot of fabric. But I was watching a TV the other day, and there was a commercial about with a guy wearing the hood up, and it grabbed my attention because the hood looked also pretty big. So when I finished this hood and I tried it on, the fit is actually perfect. It's not a big hood. It fits like a sweatshirt, a store-bought sweatshirt would. So I really like that. The only thing I want to still do before I call this a finished hood is to add a little metal end here, metal piece to the end of my drawstrings to really get the store-bought hoodie, store-bought sweatshirt look. I really like that. I don't want to tie a knot or anything. I just want to add a little bit of those little metal end pieces. I want to buy them in person. I don't want to buy online because I could only find those sets online where you get 50 metal pieces, and I just need 2. I don't want 48 little pieces of metal lying around. So yeah, I want to buy them in person, and I still haven't found them, but that's fine. When I do, I buy and I just attach it to the end of my drawstring. I wanted to use, initially my idea was to use a different color to knit the drawstring, but I don't have anything in stash that suits this color or this yarn or this type of yarn. So I just used the same Husqvarna Super Soft to knit the drawstring, and someday when I have a little leftover that I think will go well with this sweater, then I just need another drawstring and replace this one. It's just fine. I really like the finishing of this hood, like I was saying. The only thing I did, I needed exactly as in pattern. The only thing I did different, I mean, it's not even a modification. Just like the same problem I had with the Belle and Sebastian pullover, my pickup line always seems loose. So when I had to pick up stitches here to knit the hood, this is where this marker shows the first row of the hood. So from this point on, it's just hood, but it's, I mean, that's not important. So when I picked up stitches to knit the hood, my pickup line was, like always, a little bit loose. So the first row I knitted after the picking up stitches, I just knitted those through the back loop, so twisted, and yeah, you can see I have twisted stitches, but the hood will cover that. You won't be able to see my pickup line, and with this yarn and this stitch pattern, I don't really think you can see the twisted stitches, and that's fine. I mean, it was just so I was a little bit, in my mind, I wanted to know that I did something to remedy the loose pickup line. It was nothing really that important, and I can't even see my pickup line, so yeah, that was unnecessary, but it's fine. I really like that. And now when it comes to blocking, like I said, I blocked this before I did the free needle bind off, and this yarn bleeds so much, it's insane. I had, like the Thru Lines Shawl, the water for after blocking this sweater was pink, like really really pink, but I think that makes sense because they say this yarn is sold unwashed, so yeah, that's not surprising that it bleeds. That's my traveler hoodie so far, and now I just want to pick up stitches and knit one of the sleeves. So before I go to the next cast on, I just wanted to quickly mention my sweat shop blanket, because the last couple of weeks were so productive that I've even managed to knit 6 squares on my sweat shop. So I finished the shorter side. So I want to knit a 12 by 10 squares square blanket, and I finished the first row of squares. So yeah, I'm really happy about that, but I don't think I'm going to show you other than doing this because it will just get too boring, and I think I will save this for when I have at least 1 square done of each colorway, so then that will be more interesting. Now let's talk about the new cast on, and that is the Daily Stripes Cardigan by Veronika. This is a pattern from the book Knits to Wear that I bought a couple of months ago. So this is my first, this is the first time I'm knitting from a book. So I'm really excited about that, and this is one of my favorite designers, so double the excitement. And this is a top-down construction cardigan with drop shoulders and garter stitch. I am knitting size large, which is supposed to give me 10 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. I don't remember it exactly, but I think it's like 12 centimeters of positive ease or something like that. I am using 4.5 millimeter needles for the project, for this cardigan, and the yarn I'm using is actually unspun. I am using Istax, I think it's called Istax Plot Lopi, in the colorway. Oh, I forgot the numbers of the colorways, but they will be on the screen. So one of them is this beautiful rust color here, and the other one is this light beige, a light gray, something like that. I still haven't used the beige one, but I still have to finish the first orange stripe, but that will come soon enough. So this is a top down drop shoulder, so you start knitting the back, you do like a trapezoid shape before you pick up stitches to knit both fronts, and then join the front and back to start working on the body. So, and this is the first my first attempt of starting this project, because I am using unspun yarn, like I said, and this is maybe not the best yarn to use for this project. I don't know, this is my first time knitting with unspun, and the yarn suggested for this pattern is, I think it's a worsted weight, held together with one strand of mohair, and I am just using the unspun strand with no mohair. So maybe this is not the best project for this yarn. I don't know anything about unspun yarn, but I'm fine with it. I really like the fabric that I'm getting. I really didn't want to knit with mohair now. Well, for starters, because there's a huge extra cost when we add mohair to a project, and secondly, I just like the fabric I have, and I don't know, I just like it, and yeah, I'm willing to take the risk. Project page for this yarn says this, just using one strand. This yarn is pretty fragile, but so people usually knit with 2 strands or even 3 strands held together, but then I will be off gauge, and I don't want to do that either. I don't want to buy mohair. So yeah, I am taking the risk. So maybe I should knit with 2 strands, I don't know, but then I wouldn't have enough yarn to knit this project. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I have so far. So if you have any experience with knitting with unspun yarn, if you could please share those experiences with me, I would highly appreciate, because I'm just a little bit worried because of the nature of this yarn, because it is very, well, fragile, that I don't know if you'll hold up an Italian bind off or a double knitting button band that I have to do for this project. So yeah, I don't know how I will do Italian bind off or a button knit or a double knitting button band, but that's a problem for another day. For right now, I'm really happy with the fabric I have so far. I blocked this little fabric here because I didn't need a gauge swatch. I wanted to use the first few centimeters of the back panel as my gauge swatch, so I went ahead and blocked it to get a accurate measurement of my gauge. So that's how I landed on knitting size large. And when it comes to blocking, this is the first time this happened to me, because this yarn also bled a little bit. But here's the thing, the water was not orangey, was not orange, was just water-like. But when I did the burrito thing, wrapping this little piece of fabric in a towel, my towel got stained. Is now orange. I have little stripes, orange stripes, but that's fine. I just washed it and it came off, so that's fine. But I don't know, when I did the burrito thing, it stained my towel, but the water was not orange. So yeah, I don't know if that's common or not, but it's the first time it happened to me. So I just thought it was interesting to mention. And this is a little, I really like the yarn, I really like the fabric, like I said. This is toothy, I would say. I mean, can you see the strands coming off? I think you can, but I really like the fabric. This is the third time actually I've knitted this little trapezoid shape. This is the second attempt, and the first one I just frogged and used the yarn to knit the second one, and then I broke the yarn and started my third one. So the needles called for in this pattern is, I think it's a 5mm, and I know from knitting previous patterns by this designer that if I usually go up 2 needle sizes, then I'm able to hit gauge because I'm a tight knitter. So the needles called for are a 5mm, so I just started knitting using a 6mm, but I just felt like the fabric was too open, too gapey, and I didn't like the fabric, so I ripped it back and did a second attempt with a 5.5mm. Yeah, with a I used a 5mm. This is with a 5mm, and I still felt like the fabric was a little bit too loose. I hit gauge, but I just didn't like the fabric, so I decided to use a 4.5mm instead of a 5. And this is the needle suggested for this yarn actually. So yeah, I went with a 4.5, and I'm really happy with the fabric that I got. It's just not as open as the 5mm one, so I really like the fabric that I got. I blocked, I measured my gauge. Now I'm a little bit off gauge. The pattern calls, the gauge for the pattern, I think it's 16 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and I'm getting 19 stitches. So yeah, I'm a little bit off gauge, that's why I'm knitting size large, but that is fine. Let me see if I can show you the difference between 5 and 4.5mm. So I don't know if you can see. Oh no, you can see the light coming off. But I will see if I can get a better picture showing this, and I would just insert it as a bureau. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. So I would just frog this, my second attempt. I just frog this and reuse the yarn. But for right now, I just finished working on my increases for the back panel, and then I just have to knit straight down to get that trapezoid shape. So I think that's all I have to share when it comes to my daily stripes cardigan. Things will get more interesting when I start working on the stripes, when I start working with the beige yarn. But yeah, I really like this project so far. And if you can send me any information when it comes to the unspun yarn, I would highly appreciate. So yeah, I think that's all I have to share with you today when it comes to my knitting projects. I am really happy with the amount of progress I was able to put on all my projects this last couple of weeks. I even managed to work a few squares on my sweatshop blanket. I did 6 squares, which I'm really happy about. And if you can see behind me, I have a few new yarns that I arrived during the course of the last couple of weeks. Those are my spring yarns, so I'm really excited to be casting on some fun new projects that I've selected from my spring knitting plans. So yeah, I think that's all I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and ring the bell in case you don't want to miss out on any future videos, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!